File item 33, pass and retain. File item 34, AB 1266. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 1266 by Assemblymember Amiano, an act relating to people's rights.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Although current California law requires schools to provide all students an educational atmosphere free from all discrimination based on gender identity, many school districts are not in compliance with the law, either by prohibiting transgender students from participating in segregated activities or requiring a separate and therefore unequal use of school facilities. AB 1266 clarifies existing law by requiring all students K through 12 to be permitted to participate in school programs, activities, and facilities in accordance with the student's gender identity, to ensure that transgender students are protected and have the same opportunities to participate and succeed as others. No student can learn if they feel like they have to hide who they are at school or if they are singled out for unequal treatment. Denying transgender students equal treatment based on their gender identity denies them their right to a safe and supportive learning environment. Schools across California, including some of the state's largest school districts, are already accepting and supporting their transgender students and allowing them equal access to school activities based on their gender identity, some for more than 8 years. No harm has ever been documented when schools permit transgender students common sense equal access on the same basis as all other students, treating transgender girls like all other girls and transgender boys like all other boys. Making this requirement clear will help parents and students understand their rights while also helping schools comply with the law, reducing conflict for potential litigation while protecting students' health and well-being. This bill does not require schools to create new programs or new facilities for any students and therefore does not have any fiscal impact. I know this is a sensitive issue. It is especially sensitive to families who have a transgender child. It is in honor of these families that I ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, members. You know, I think all of us in this body, every single member who is here, is absolutely committed to protecting and upholding the civil rights of every American and also respecting the natural rights of every human being. This bill, AB 1266, seeks to assert that some groups have more rights than others, because in the end, you have a very small group of people who are asserting that they have a right that will then put the rights of the rest and subjugate them. And I think that is a mistake. I think this policy has good intention. I think we need to teach and educate kids to treat each other with mutual respect. I do not believe that by allowing individuals of opposite sex to use the same restrooms makes any sense at all. And I think the vast majority of Californians deeply oppose this, sometimes for reasons they cannot even articulate. It just isn't right. And I think we need to be very careful here today, because when we set a precedent in the state of California, it travels across the country. And I think we need to respect the right of every student in the school. And we also need to challenge the students to respect each other, even when they're different. Respect each other's differences of opinion. Respect each other's differences in every aspect. But do not legislate a solution that will essentially deprive the right of privacy to the greater good. I urge a no vote.
Mr. Ting.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong support of this bill. I'd like to thank Assemblymember Amiano for bringing this. This is a bill that's also personal to me and my staff. I have a current staff person who, when he entered into the building, he was Heather, and now he has transitioned and become Evan. And this very courageous person is very part of a very courageous community, because they do this because they want to be the person they believe they are. And when Mr. Donnelly's point is absolutely right, we should treat everybody equally. And this is an acknowledgement that we have a very diverse society, we have very diverse communities, and many of our students have very diverse needs. And we're at this point where we can acknowledge that. We can make their lives a little bit easier, because this brave community goes through a major physical transformation knowing that they're going to face potential segregation, face potential humiliation, face potential ostracizing by our communities. So I think we have to do everything possible to make sure that we are supportive of that and really watching them and really urging their courage, supporting their courage. So I just ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Assemblymember Lowenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I stand in strong support of AB 1266. And members, I'm reminded of several things. One is the discussions that we have had on this floor at great length about bullying and how challenging that is for the individuals who are bullied. And as Mr. Ting just said, it brings to mind the opportunities that people have experienced being bullied because of who they are, and that's unacceptable. I'm also reminded of those of us who've served in cities on city councils, who've been involved in anti-discrimination ordinances over the many years. I personally authored an ordinance in Long Beach to add gender identity to our anti-discrimination ordinance. So I think it's time that we recognize all people. It doesn't matter if it's one, it doesn't matter if it's 50 or 100, but our students need to be who they are and they need to be respected. I stand in strong support of AB 1266.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I reluctantly rise to oppose this bill as well. We currently have California law protects students from discrimination in education based on sex and gender identity. Many school districts do not understand or know presently in compliance with their obligations to treat transgender students from sex-segregated programs. But this is not a practical bill. Think about all of us who have sons and daughters in intramural sports. It's one thing to play on a different team. It's another thing to go into locker rooms, change, shower, those type of things with it. We're already 11, 12, 13-year-old is already kind of nervous about all that stuff in a public setting. This bill will require the students to obligate my 16-year-old son, if he decides that all of a sudden to declare to go into the girls' locker rooms. Okay, that may be fair for that person, but not for those girls who has to have that person come into the locker rooms now, or reverse that role. This is not a practical bill. If you want to protect these students who are very much under the bullying, have to worry about peer pressure and bullying and all the rest of it, you don't put them in that kind of situation because they can, because that's not going to protect them, that's going to make things worse. It's going to really, I've heard from all my school districts in the district, it's like, how do we implement this rule? How do we put this law? We don't have the funds to build a third locker room. We don't have funds to segregate every one of these students to have where they shower separately, all these things. Most of these schools don't have that capability. And you're asking not just to protect that one student, but now you're affecting all those other students who are not comfortable changing in front of a different gender person in front of them, regardless of their self-proclaimed identity. This is a very unpragmatic bill. We need to work on liberating our students to be accepting, to have students come out of the closet earlier when they know, but this is forcing a bad situation into this, and I urge a no vote.
Ms. Atkins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, schools across California, including some of our state's largest school districts, are actually already accepting and supporting their transgender students and allowing them equal access to school activities and facilities based on their gender identity. No harm has ever come or been documented when schools permit transgender students common sense equal access on the same basis as all other students, treating transgender girls like all other girls and transgender boys like all other boys. I would really urge your support for this measure.
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong support of this bill. This bill is about all children and the right of every child in this state to feel safe and to feel their own self-esteem and good about themselves. We have an obligation to provide for the children of this state. If a district as large as the Los Angeles Unified School District, that I represent about 250,000 of my constituents, if a district that large can implement a policy like this with no problem at all, then there is no reason why this should not be state policy and every reason why it should be. I ask for your aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Amiano, you may close.
Yes, thank you very much. And, I do hear some of the arguments against this. Of course, we've been hearing that for a long time in regard to this demographic. And I think that we do have the data and the empirical evidence to show in the school districts that do provide a supportive environment, that there are no incidents. Sometimes as adults, we do project our own insecurities onto an issue and simplify it, make it simplistic, reduce something to bathroom functions, and I think that reveals more about us than about the situation that does exist for transgender students. This bill does not set a precedent. It is the law already. This bill simply clarifies what some school districts are asking for, which is guidance, and what some school districts are not doing to provide a path to accommodate. This is not a small group. The group's been invisible. The group's been maimed and murdered and marginalized, but this is not a small group. And children are coming out now and telling their parents, yes, telling them at 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 years old that they're not a boy, even if they have the anatomy of a boy. And this is never, ever about trampling on anybody else's rights. That's always a twist, a spin. This is about people who had been denied their rights, catching up to those who have the rights. There is no increased cost. There are no special equal facilities that need to be built. Transgender kids aren't stupid. If it's a hostile locker room or a hostile playground or a hostile street or a hostile teacher, they're not going to deal with that. They're going to ask for an accommodation that any student, there are many students who want more privacy in their situations, and they can ask, whether they're transgender or not, for an accommodation, a bathroom in the nurse's office, whatever it takes. So this is not saying this is only open to transgender students. And it is to the benefit of other students, just like in the LA school district and in San Francisco. It is the benefit to them to drop these prejudices when they get to know the students. And I have to tell you how brave and how courageous these students are. And we're all parents, many of us. And it's going to impact our families as well. And we're going to want our kids to be treated equally. Because someone is uncomfortable is not a reason to discriminate. I can walk into many rooms in many of your districts, and I know your constituents would be uncomfortable with me. But that's not going to allow them to beat me up. That's not going to allow them to deny me access that the non-transgender kids have. I thank the transgender community for their contribution, for their suffering, for their nobility. And this legislature should follow their lead. I gave a Transgender 101 to the Democratic caucus the other day. It was very beneficial in terms of education. I know there are haters out there. There's no haters in this chamber. But we could all be on a learning curve about this issue. And remember, the law of California is you cannot discriminate. This doesn't add anything new. This clarifies. This reassures. This shows the nobility of what a legislature can do. I urge an aye vote.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the vote. Ayes 45, noes 24. Measure passes.